Welcome to the Happy, Healthy Life Podcast with your hosts, Rob and Randy, who reveal the truth, the lies, and confusion about health so that you are no longer the victim to mainstream medical dogma and you are the hero to your own happy, healthy story.
Welcome to the Happy, Healthy Life Podcast. We are your hosts and the Happy, Healthy guys, Rob and
Randy. What is up?
Yeah. So
Good to have my boy back.
Oh, it's great to be back. Thank you so much for holding down the fort while I was absent and taking a little bit of a sabbatical. What turned into what we thought was only going to be a week or two of going through some stuff with my dad. So here's the story. So back in October, got a phone call as I was driving my kids to school in the morning from my niece Bailey. Many of you who were in Italy with us know Bailey. She was there as part of the Happy Healthy team. We are a Happy Healthy family, and she was helping out. Well, she lives with my dad. Her and my sister Stephanie do, and then my other niece Barrett. Well, every morning, Bailey, on her way out the door, and for years and years and years, my dad took Bailey to school every day and had breakfast with her every day. So it just came a ritual that she would always say bye to my dad when she left. Well, this October morning, she went to go say bye to my dad, and he didn't say bye back. And so she went into his room. She didn't see him, and she could hear something in his closet. So she went in there, and she found my dad. He was literally on his back and literally laying on his back underneath a pile of about 6 inches of clothes. And he was completely unresponsive. She was talking to him. His eyes were open. There was blood that was coming out of his ear. And she called me immediately, called 911. And 911 came, got him to the ICU that morning, rushed to literally just didn't even pack or anything, dropped my kids off at school and went directly down to San Antonio, which is about 4 hours from here. I think I made that trip in about 3 hours that day. And got to the emergency room, and my dad still completely unresponsive, didn't recognize anybody, was really just blank stares. And got him into the he was in the emergency room, and then got him up to ICU. And what ended up transpiring was the fact that he had had a series of strokes. And once we did the brain scans and the MRIs, you could see these pockets of strokes or dead tissue inside of his brain. And what we deduced over time is that my dad had a series of strokes even before then. At one point, about 2 months prior to that, he was doing some work on his truck in the driveway. My niece Bailey was there, and he collapsed in the driveway. My dad said it was due to dehydration, and so and Bailey took it as, okay, it's dehydration. So all that to say is that when we look back on it, I could see that over the last few years, since my stepmother had passed away, his wife passed away, he really just stopped caring about his health. She was the love of his life. She literally did everything, took care of him. They were a beautiful couple together. And so after she passed away, he really just lost a will to live. And it's, when you hear those stories about people who die of a broken heart, that was literally what was happening. And so fast forward to before Christmas, he was in ICU, and then after ICU, he started getting better and went to an acute rehab facility to start getting him cognitively better. He was recognizing people. Again, he was talking, although it was like we were talking to somebody who is in the 3rd grade, he was still responsive and he was talking. And so as he was getting better in the hospital, what I saw, and this is why I was gone so much, is because I was in San Antonio the majority of the time. We literally had gone to and flown to London. As soon as I got back from London, I went directly to San Antonio. I would be up here, go down to San Antonio. There was a period of time where I didn't know if my car was at my home, at the airport, at the office, in San Antonio, and here it was just going back and forth and back and forth because I literally, while he was in the medical care system or quote healthcare system, I had to stand guard for my dad. It was really pathetic, to the care that he was getting. It was even like we talk about with Happy Healthy is in our metabolism program. Metabolism, isn't about how healthy your metabolism is, isn't about exercising more or reducing calories. It's about getting quality nutrients, bioavailable nutrients into the body. So where they would say in the hospital, for example, they would say, "Hey, he's got to be eating." He was on a feeding tube. He couldn't swallow. His brain wasn't getting the signal down to his esophagus, and just to help him along while I was there, I was adjusting him, taking care of him, practically speaking, making sure that the nerves could get to his brain as well as possible. And he started coming back too, but they would just put calories into him. They're like, "Hey, we got to get calories into him." I'm like, "No, you don't got to get calories into him. You got to get nutrients in him. Let's change what it is that's going to the feeding tube. Let's make sure that we're getting nutrients into him, not just getting calories into him." And then I would leave the hospital, and then my sisters would tell me what the doctors were wanting to do. It would be like they would come along and they'd want to give him vaccinate him, and give him a shot, give him this, give him that. And then I'd have to literally come back in and say, "No, you can't do that." And so I know I would challenge the doctors, not so much the nurses. The nurses were great because they would listen to me as they would hear me speak. And the nurses would change shifts. It was pretty funny because whenever they would start talking to me, they'd ask me the same question. They'd go, "What exactly do you do for a living?" And because I knew what it is that I was talking about, and they would even shake their heads about the recommendations that the doctors were giving them there, because it's not a healthcare system. It's let's be honest, it's a sick care system. And so he got transferred to this acute care facility, which is where like he was barely being taken care of and or watched. And while he was there, he had a fall. Nobody was paying attention to him. He literally gets out of bed, he falls down and breaks his hip. And they didn't even know that he broke his hip. So they said he fell, he was knocked unconscious. They took him back to the ICU. So he goes back again to the ICU. They have no idea what's going on. Again, I'm back down to San Antonio again to see what's going on. I get down there. They say, "We don't know if he had another stroke and fell down or what's going on." And I could see that he was really complaining of his hip. And I said, "Hey, why don't you guys take an x-ray of his hip again?" They're like, "Who the heck are you?" I'm like, "Well, I'm somebody that it's pretty obvious that there's something going on with his hip. Let's get an x-ray taken of that." And of course, then they send the doctors in there, and the doctors are like, "Who are you?" I'm like, "I'm a doctor." And so finally, reluctantly, they went ahead and took an x-ray of his pelvis. And what took like, I'm like, what are the results? It doesn't take that long to get an image back of an x-ray. I know when we, even in chiropractic practice, you would take an x-ray and see the results of that with digital x-ray is like right now. So 24 hours goes by, and a nurse is the one that's having the conversation to me. And she's like, "Hey, I'm not supposed to tell you this. However, the x-rays of your dad came back showing that he's got a broken hip." So literally the ball of his femur was broken off with the trochanter of it. The neck of his femur like completely broken off. So if this is the ball of your femur, it looked like, for those of you guys who were watching, it looked like this. It was completely separated. She showed me the film. I was like, "Oh my God." So he was in crazy amounts of pain. And at that point, it was an emergency decision. And when it's your own family and you're having to make decisions like this for somebody who can't make a decision on their own, it was some of the hardest decisions that we've ever had to make. And so it was either he's in extreme pain all the time. They were having to give him fentanyl in order to be able to suppress the pain. The morphine wasn't doing it. He was like literally crying and screaming. And so we made the decision to go ahead and have him get a hip replacement. He got the hip replacement. As soon as he got the hip replacement, the pain was gone. However, just because of the amount of trauma and stress now that had been put onto him, because that marked 2 times that they had to go in and do surgery while he was in there and being put under with the anesthesia, and just what that does to the body, just weakening the body even more. After that happened, he really never came back around, cognitively speaking, and it just went downhill very rapidly. And then ultimately, on I believe it was December the 18th, he passed away. And so being there with my family and needing to do that, thank God for having an amazing team with Happy Healthy that was able to hold down the fort through that entire experience. But it strengthened my passion and mission for what it is that we do more than ever before, because I go back and I look at even the life of my dad, as great of a man as he is, and as smart of a man as he was. The one thing that he really was never, I wouldn't say that concerned about, but he really wasn't very intentional about, was his health. So he's somebody who had smoked since he was literally a teenager. If I was there with him, he knew that the only thing that I would eat would be organic food. As far as my nutrition goes, he knew what it was, and he was like, "That's okay for you. It's not really something that I'm going to do because I'm thin." He was that person who could eat whatever it is that he wanted, and he would stay thin. So just because you're thin, it doesn't make you healthy, right? Just because your body is able to burn more calories, it also doesn't mean that you're metabolically healthy either. And so he really just lived this life where he wasn't taking care of him. So he was really only one trauma away from losing his life, which is ultimately what happened with him. And so when my stepmother had passed away, she was also the person who was the health advocate for the family and making sure that he was eating, quote, healthier, with her no longer there and him not caring, just from an emotional state. And that's why we always say, when we're creating happy, healthy people, or our focus, and this is something that we talk a lot about with our Happy Healthy for Life group, is that it's not just about how we're doing physically when it comes to our health. It's not just about being thin. It's not just about being at your ideal body weight. It's really being healthy from above down, inside out, spiritually, chemically, physically, mentally. It all goes together. So if I've learned anything about what it is that happened throughout this last month, it's been that it's all connected. You can't have one without the other. You can't do one thing without affecting everything else. And so that's also got me thinking that, you know what, with what it is that he went through with my dad, it didn't just affect him, it affected his entire family. It affected all of us. So now, as we're wading through all of these different things, we can see that he was losing his mental faculties, his cognition, over the last couple of years, where we thought he had things taken care of. For example, with, if you've ever lost, especially like a parent with like the estate, it's a mess. And so now we're the ones that are having to go through all of those things and put all the pieces together for that. So it's not just you that it affects whenever you're not intentional with your health. It affects everybody. And it's the one thing that you don't think about until you actually lose your health. And so that's why what it is that we do is so important. It's because we got to be, number one is you got to be intentional with your own health, right? Your health is your responsibility. Nobody's going to do it for you. We can guide you, but we can't make you make the changes, right? Only you can do those things. The great thing is that these changes can happen spontaneously in an instant. The change happens as soon as you make the commitment that I'm going to live a healthier life. Now, over a time period like we show you with our program, where our program is only 5 weeks long, so we're talking 35 days and making daily action steps every single day, being held accountable to those things every single day. Now, the changes happen over time as you're getting better. However, the decision happens that fast. And so that decision happens, and then having the belief that your body can overcome these sicknesses, diseases, illness, that's a whole different thing in and of itself. But my dad's belief was, I'm healthy. And the reason his belief was I'm healthy is because he didn't have any symptoms. When we look at the definition of health, the definition of health says that you're healthy when your body is functioning at 100% chemically, physically, spiritually, mentally, not merely the absence of symptoms, disease, or infirmity. So that's why with Happy Healthy, we're always talking about all of these different facets. So those of you who are new, even into the Happy Healthy family, know that you're not just doing a metabolism program for the purpose of losing weight. You're doing a program for the purpose of getting you healthy so that you can be healthy 100% chemically, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, all of the things. And that's what it is you get with Happy Healthy. So I say that to say that, you know what, make that decision right now to be healthier. Even if you're in the program right now, make that decision. Maybe you've fallen off the wagon to change what it is that you're doing right now. I thank God for our program, the accountability that we have together, Dr. Randy and myself, along with the rest of the team, because as all the days were going by with everything that was going on with my dad, you know what I was still doing? I was still getting up, doing my brain tap. I was still meditating. I was still journaling. I was still praying. I was still eating intentionally. I was still doing all of the things that we teach y'all, which if it wouldn't have been for that, I'd probably be a freaking train wreck right now. I can't imagine how somebody could go through something like that without doing what it is that we teach y'all on a daily basis. So that's my a rant. I really didn't have an expectation of what it is that I was, what we were going to be talking about today, but I think it's important that we remind you that the decisions that you make today when it comes to your health ultimately affect not only your life, but all of the lives around you for eternity. And really, that becomes your legacy. So,
Yeah, no, well said, man. Well said.
Yeah.
Is it any more simple than that right there? And I think that's a mistake we all make, at some point. Health really is, although it is we believe it's a birthright, it's a God-given birthright that we are, born and made and developed and formed in his image. God does not make junk. Don't ever forget that. He made you the greatest thing he ever created is us. It's you, it's me, because that right there is our birthright. However, we always say you don't need more healing as you get older. You just need less interference, which is the whole goal. Because remember, health is a verb. It's not a noun. It's something you're either working on building or you're ignoring it and it's going away. And so I'd even done a previous podcast. We talked about this, Dr. Rob, when you were gone, talking about, how do you just wind up one day sick, fat, depressed, overweight, miserable on medication and diagnosed with cancer? It doesn't come out of nowhere. It comes out of years of just breaking certain laws of health over and over and over and over. And then all of a sudden it feels like it comes out of nowhere, but it just really doesn't. And so when you've already been healed, that health is the normal and disease is the abnormal, now the goal is to live intentionally, and you can only do with what you know to do when you know how to do better. We've all broken some laws of health over the years. Heck, I got myself in a big trouble, back July 2010 with a cancer diagnosis. And God, who could have imagined that? But it's been it woke me up. I can tell you that right now. And I'm not going back to living that way or thinking that things just work out just magically without real intention. And so that's why I think we do what we do, Dr. Rob, is we just don't want any more people waking up facing situations that are preventable when they really are. Health and disease, they really are the same thing. Never forget that. Health and disease are the exact same thing. Let that marinate. Health, disease, same thing. All right. It's the body doing the right thing under the circumstances. What are the circumstances? What is the environment you're creating? Mind, body, and spirit. And when you create that right environment, which is really the happy, healthy message, good things are more likely to happen.
And I'm glad you said that too, because, as I'm thinking about it, even watching everything with my dad, you could see where his body was trying its hardest innately to be healing. But then when you start dumping a bunch of chemicals into the system, it was interesting too, because even just watching in the ICU where they've got to put one thing in to be able to lower blood pressure here because of the side effect of the medication that was
Crazy.
giving over here to over here, the body just can't function and those messages get jumbled up. And so we have to remember that, what? God's perfect. And the way he created our body to function, to be able to heal is absolutely perfect. The only thing that screws it up is when we screw things
Yeah,
up,
we
right?
screw it up.
Yeah, absolutely. So the miracle isn't in your body healing. The miracle would be in your body overcoming medical treatment, really.
Yeah.
And where there are some medical treatments that may be necessary because of an emergency situation, and thank God we have it there,
Yeah.
or an emergency, but in a healthcare situation, it is a miracle when the body can be able to overcome any of those different things. So,
Yeah.
so remember that, especially those of you who think that you're listening to the podcast, those of you who think that health is just about feeling good and or being thin, that ain't health at all. When people say, and I just read that what you said there, Chris, when people say that, yeah, I'm fit, well, what does that even mean?
Yeah.
How do you really know that you're healthy, right? You better be able to measure the markers in your body, which is why even in the Happy Healthy for Life system and program, we do measure, we do utilize blood markers in there. We do utilize some of those things
Yeah,
so
the
that we
heart
can be
rate
able
variability.
heart rate
Yeah.
variability to be able to see how your body really is adapting to the stresses of life, the environment, whether it is emotionally or physically or whatever those things are. So we really want to make sure that we've got those markers that can be able to tell us how healthy we are, because feeling good doesn't mean you're healthy.
No, no, no. Unfortunately, it just doesn't work that way. But that's kind of the definition of health. If we're going to be honest, most people, they think they're healthy when they feel good. And when they feel bad, they go to the doctor. Now their doctor breaks out their little bag of tricks and gimmicks and voodoo and hand waving and starts throwing pills and magical potions at them. And it's like we've moved all of our faith into a teaspoonful of medicine and moved it away from the power that animates the universe. And, these aren't even religious statements. These are just facts, guys. God made our body to be healthy. Health is the norm, disease is the abnorm. And I can't stand it because, when you start looking at all the medical claws that get dug into so many people, they do their worst, or which is their best. And then after they're done, it's like, well, now it's in God's hands. And I'm thinking, well, maybe it should have been in God's hands before the medical claws got in, because now it's not God's fault. Now we're praying for a miracle. And God's like, well, we didn't need a miracle. We just needed to stop interfering and stop messing this thing up. Don't jump off a building and ask God to save you. He can, but he's probably going to be like, well, dang it, why'd you break the law of gravity?
Why are you eating at McDonald's every day?
Yeah. Why were you? Yeah. Yeah. Why were you taking every drug known to man, masking all your symptoms with over-the-counter medications, getting every latest vaccine? That had nothing to do with God. That was us literally destroying the human body, mind, body, and spirit under a mindset that's fear-based, that's outside in, that's reductionist and allopathic, versus an inside-out mindset, knowing that, wait a second, we don't need more healing. We've already been healed. Our goal now is to be responsible enough to know what, hey, I want to learn how to stop interfering with this process that's already been given to me the second I was actually born onto this planet. I didn't need any more healing. And really from that point on is where the battle begins, which is why we as parents, you as a parent, me as an uncle, us as leaders, we have to now teach this next generation how to navigate this, because, oh my God, I mean, literally everything that we're being hit with is such, it's strategic. It's nefarious, man. The messaging, the germ theory, the lies, the drugs, the vaccines, the mindset, the foods, the whole thing is being shoved down our kids' throats. And we have to rescue our children, teach them what's right, and help them navigate and get out of this system so they don't end up being another statistic which is really right now the biggest growth in cancer, obesity, all chronic illness, and the most medicated people right now in our country. That's all happening in our children, and that is not okay.
Yeah, not in my children.
Heck no, not your kids.
Exactly.
Yeah, and your kids aren't getting any drugs, so who's getting their dose?
Exactly. Somebody else.
And my nephews aren't either.
Exactly. So thank God we have this principle that we live by with Happy Healthy. And so if you know somebody and maybe you're listening to the podcast and you're like, hey, that person needs to get this information, send them into the next Happy Healthy challenge that we have is actually next week. So it starts next Monday. So send them over to h2thinchallenge.com. That's a great way for them to get in. It's a great way for them to be able to learn how to also start losing weight, so that they don't ever have to gain it back again. Get them over there, your family or friends. The challenge, it doesn't cost anything. They don't have anything to lose. So get them into that challenge, h2thinchallenge.com, and we'll start that on Monday. And so Monday is, I don't know what the date is on Monday, but it's probably going to be a good idea.
22nd.
Is it the 22nd?
Yeah,
All right. So
22nd.
Monday, 22nd, 11 a.m. Central Standard Time is going to be live. We'll replay it every day at 6 p.m. So be there for that challenge, and then we'll come to you next week with another episode of our podcast. So thanks a lot for listening to the podcast, and we are going to stop the podcast portion of our program today, and we will be back with you next week.
Thanks for listening to the Happy Healthy Life podcast. If you enjoy the show, make sure to follow them on Instagram at the H2 Life, or on YouTube and Facebook at The Happy Healthy Guys. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, and review the show wherever you listen to podcasts.